As a developer and as a business owner, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
I don't sleep. Everything keeps me up at night.
Any advice for someone just starting out? I'd like to welcome our listeners to the Boulos Beat podcast. I'm your guest host, Derek Miller, partner at the Boulos Company. The Boulos Company is Northern New England's largest commercial real estate services firm with offices in Portland, Maine, as well as Manchester and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We've been selling and leasing real estate in Maine and New Hampshire since 1975. This podcast is designed to provide insight into Maine's business movers and shakers. And speaking of business leaders, I'd like to welcome Josh Levy to the Boulos Beat. Josh is a co-founding principal of Waterstone Properties Group, the second largest retail developer in New England. Waterstone specializes in mixed-use developments, retail, healthcare, office, and logistics centers. Josh is actively involved in all facets of the company's nearly 70 commercial properties. In recent years, Josh has spearheaded Waterstone's mixed-use projects, including Maine's own Rock Row in Greater Portland. Josh is actively involved in fostering partnerships with civic organizations, government officials, brokers, and tenants, as well as co-chairman of the Board of Advisors for Newton Wellesley Hospital. Josh, I'm always fascinated with how people got their start in the business. Can you share your story to that end?
Sure. I grew up in Falmouth and didn't have any family in real estate. My dad and grandpa, I always joke, had gone in together on a condo investment once and did not work out, and that was about the extent of it. And but I had started a landscaping business when I was about 10 or 11 with another friend, and by the time we were 12 or 13, we had 10 or 12 friends working with us, and just was obsessed with that. That's what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to go to college at the time. And I ended up meeting Joel Wilder, who founded the Wilder Companies. And they were a huge enclosed mall developer and now really great on the lifestyle development, et cetera. But he was saying, all right, kid, you got to go to college. What do you want to be when you go? And I said, I want to be a real estate attorney then. And he said, no, you don't, and here's why, and no knock on that, but he said, you know, you should do what I do. And I was like, okay, how do I do what you do? And he ended up, it was great. He let me have an internship with his son, Tom, who's a great friend and partner with us now on when I was 17. So all 4 years of college, I interned for them, just abstracting leases and working on all of the grunt intern work, but loving it. Yeah. And I also rented apartments to pay for school at the same time. And was just bit with the bug. So ever since I was 17, I was lucky to have a real focus saying all I want to do is be a retail shopping center developer, and then just kind of focused all of my energy towards that since then.
Excellent. Excellent. Who have been some of your biggest mentors, and you touched on it a bit there, or influences in the real estate business?
So many. People have just been incredible over the last 20 years, whether it's my partner, Neil Shalom, or Richard Barnett on the healthcare side, or, I look up to my father and others, and a lot of people, too many to list. But I'd say a really influential one would be John McQueenie, who spent 55 years in the grocery development business, 25 years at Stop and Shop. He started stocking shelves and then ran their entire superstore program for real estate, plus Bradley's at the time, which they owned. And then he spent another 30 years developing for supermarkets. So he has forgotten in one day more than I've learned in my whole life. Yeah. And he has just been a very special, incredible mentor, especially on the supermarket development business. Yeah. Somebody I've always looked up to. And your co-founder, Neil Shalom, he came over from Equity Industrial, is that correct? He started doing factory outlet center development in the 80s in Kittery, Maine, in 1983. As he said, he built that with just a clipboard and a lot of perseverance, and then did some other projects throughout the state. Then he transitioned into big box industrial and logistics, and then he and I co-founded Waterstone in 2005. And that was, you guys, when you first co-founded Waterstone, it was, the focus was grocery anchored retail. Is that correct? Correct. Yep. We bought a shopping center in Carver, Mass. that we failed spectacularly. I mean, failed with fireworks. We lost every single tenant except Vanity Hair, Heidi and Rose, who are still with us today. We love them, and spent money along the way somehow. And eventually we retrofitted it with a gym and a Dollar Tree and sold a piece to Tractor Supply. And, 18 years later, I think, knock on wood, we may make money on it next year.
Yeah.
But it got us in the game and it got us started.
Yep.
And we started building it from there.
Excellent. Speaking of which, you co-founded Waterstone at a very young age. Have you ever had to overcome ageism or someone doubting your experience as a result?
Absolutely, for the majority of the beginning of
Yeah.
the business. We couldn't get a single return call from a tenant, but that was also because we were new.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, look, there are people that have really been doing this a long time, right? 30, 40, 50 years, as you know, is not uncommon. So I think just keeping my head down and being respectful and learning, because that's really what I spent still today, just 20 years in, learning and trying to grow and catch up to some of these other folks. So
Yeah. When looking at new properties on the acquisition side, what are some keys that you and your partners look for?
it depends on the project type, but if it's, let's say, mixed use, first of all, a community that wants and needs a project and is going to welcome it in, right? I mean, especially in New England, there are some towns where it's almost impossible to develop, and we've tried before and not worth banging your head against the wall. But I think first a community that is looking for, thoughtful, carefully crafted, mixed use projects. Then we look at the demographics, and then we spend a lot of time, we run all the software models, and we have the demographics and the site reports and Claritas and geofencing and the gap analysis of what sales potential is there and the leakage. But the most important thing is just boots on the ground. I mean, we're just, go to the parking lot and chat people up of, sometimes people get a little freaked out.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you looking for? Where are you traveling to right now? What would be convenient for you? What's missing from the area? Talk to every store manager in the region, just old-fashioned boots on the ground, talking to people for hours and hours and hours, finding out what they need, and then trying to respond with that. So it's more about identifying an area that has a need and how we can deliver on it, not about us coming to an area and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do here.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys certainly have seemingly fostered a great relationship with the town of Westbrook.
Westbrook is a absolutely phenomenal community, and Greater Westbrook, as we and Jerry Bryant like to say, but has been really, really welcoming and a great active partner in the Rock Row project. And, we spent a lot of time. We formed over 40 local and regional partnerships. After this, I'm heading over to discover downtown Westbrook, then also with My Place Teen Center, and then Visit Portland and the Muskie School, USM and others. So it's been great understanding what people want to see happen, and then, essentially partnering up to make that work.
Helping them get there.
Yeah.
You own properties all over the country. What is one thing that Maine, as a state, could do better or change to become more conducive to real estate development or business in general?
I think there's a great openness to economic development and growth, and certainly a lot of exciting things happening in the state. And I think COVID's only accelerated that, right?
Yeah.
Out of the top 5 states that saw in-migration, Maine, I think, number 3, and especially in southern Maine, but a lot of exciting things happening. We've been looking in other parts to the north as well and west. But I think one of the biggest things, that there's a lot of local, whether that's city or town support on projects. I just think an additional push at the state level and involvement, where you have groups coming and willing to invest to really help get behind projects and push with all their resources.
Yeah.
And some more regional planning that you do see in other areas like Arizona and Texas. I shouldn't talk in Massachusetts. It's very tough because it's very parochial for each town. But some of the regional streamlined permitting and planning could really help a lot.
Excellent. What was the most challenging project, and you may have already touched on it, that you've done thus far in your career?
I wouldn't know where to start, but that would be one of them. That Carver Marketplace. The very next one, we bought a piece of land in West Bridgewater, Mass, and stupidly put the traffic light in first. We didn't have any tenants or any permits, and we bought the land in our infinite wisdom. Great location to this day, but put the traffic light in first, and we struck out for 8 or 9 years on that. But then eventually we ended up buying a glass place, a tire shop, a boatyard, relocating 3 families who were on this busy Maine drag, or their kids were running out into the street to find new homes in another area of the community, and assembled 12 acres and did a great project with Market Basket there that we're very proud of. And kind of validated our
Yeah.
initial thinking, but really serves that area. But we've made way more mistakes than we've had
Sometimes
successes over time. But
sometimes it seems like anyways, the sweetest projects are the most challenging at times, because once you get there, it's all the more rewarding.
My favorite is Brickyard Square that we developed in Epping, New Hampshire, right at the crossroads between 101 and 125. Everybody said we were crazy when we bought that in 2006 and 7. And there's not a lot of houses to paint in the 1 and 3 and 5 mile radius, which is what most retailers typically look at. So when we were calling, Ulta Beauty and PetSmart and all these companies from out of the Northeast, they're saying where? And we had to really help show them that, no, look, this really serves the 24 cities and towns in between Portsmouth and Manchester. And eventually we ended up sticking with it and developing it. It was one of 3 shopping centers that were built during the downturn, the Great Recession. And it's about 300,000 square feet with 28 national, but also local and regional restaurants and shops, and has been awesome for that area and the families there. So we're really proud and excited about that one. But that was a very challenging one that we stuck with over the long term.
Yeah, it's always been, I would say, eye-opening to me how far folks are willing to travel in Maine and New Hampshire. So like you referenced the demographics that most national retailers typically look for, and that alone can be a challenge, because I feel like the draw area is much wider.
Double the average commute time in Maine and New Hampshire. People are willing to drive twice as far as they are in other parts of the country, which, as you know, it's nothing to drive half hour, 45 minutes to get grocery. We're seeing Market Basket at Rock Rose pulling an hour and a half, right?
Yep.
But to go for entertainment or activities or events. And so we're really constantly educating retailers or businesses from out of state that, you got to look beyond that traditional 1, 3, 5 mile ring. It's really, it's a more of a polygon trade area that gets established.
For sure. We have people we know up in Bangor that I always hear that every time they come down to Greater Portland, they're going to Market Basket or Whole Foods and taking it back up there with them. You guys have been doing a lot of curating, it seems like, it's almost like curating a city district, especially with something like Rock Row, with the size and scale of that project. So there's a lot of experience there. How as it sits today, phase 1 is pretty much complete, I believe, and fully leased up.
Yeah. Even just taking a quick step back, so it's 100 acres on I-95 on the turnpike between exits 47 and 48, and it's an abandoned old quarry site, the old Pike Blue Rock project that's partly in Westbrook, partly in Portland. And we bought that in October of 2017, and it was slated to be a Walmart shopping center with a sea of parking right up on the quarry. And we tore up the plans and went back to the drawing board. And that's where we spent, I was there in the local Westbrook community, and then Portland, Gorham, Buxton, Falmouth, Cumberland, the whole area, 3-4 days a week. I'm lucky I'm still married.
Yeah.
Just finding out what people want and need. And that's where we really started forming all of those 36 to 40 local partnerships as well. But we also went around the country on a research and discovery tour to 27 different cities and towns to look at mixed-use projects, what works, what doesn't work, what can we bring back to bear here. And that was really the birth of Rock Row, which in total will be close to 3 million square feet. It's a $700 million project. One misnomer is that it's a shopping center. I think we're about 5 to 7% of it is actually retail.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is office, lab space, incubator, healthcare, entertainment, community spaces, residential. And so, sorry, long-winded way.
No.
We opened the first phase, which has been a huge success. That's really the neighborhood community-based portion. So that's with the Market Basket, REI, Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Chase Bank. That's convenient in and out up on Brighton Ave with the parking in front. And then all the way on the other side is where we broke ground on the medical and research campus that we're very excited about with New England Cancer Specialists, who is the only affiliate of Dana-Farber in the country. And we're adding in a lot of other specialty, primary, urgent, and other care into that facility.
Excellent. Yeah, no, we're very happy to be part of phase 2 with the CLT office building. That construction method, I would say, is very unique, and then this is slated to be Maine's first CLT office property. What about that construction type kind of drew you guys to using
Gotcha.
that?
Yeah, and you're talking about where, so that was phase 1, Market Basket, the medical campus, and then all of the magic in between is really that urban mixed-use lifestyle district. And one of the anchors in there is we announced the state's first cross-laminated timber office building that, we're very excited to be working with Derek with you and your team on that. CLT, it's essentially a wood product, a wood panel product that's made from solid sawn timber, so cut from the same log, and it's pieced together on the wide side of the panel, glued together at a perpendicular angle. And by putting it together at 90 degrees, it makes it a lot more rigid. It adds rigidity and structural soundness to it, and it's been a really interesting product that's very sustainable, environmentally friendly, green, and provides a great work environment for employees. So that's what drew us to that. It's, to date, I think the only project has been a stairwell in a residential building. And there's a new one at Pease Tradeport that's gone up, a lot of others around the country. The IBC changed the building code to allow to go up multiple stories. So that originally prompted us to look at it. And the more we learned about CLT, it's pretty exciting. I mean, not just and it's, let's see, 66% lower heating and cooling costs, a lot better for forestry management in the way that it's created, much lower carbon footprint, deals great with carbon sequestration, less foundations are needed because it's so much lighter. So in southern Maine, we have a lot of clay and are always dealing with ground improvements or piles, and you can avoid that. But we're excited about what happens within it because it creates a better, more productive place to work.
Yeah. No, the warmth, I got really excited about the project when we saw your early renderings. And those then, of themselves were more kind of themed off of other similar CLT projects around the company. Your partners on the architectural side, EYP, have done a great job with, putting together the floor plates, the renderings. And we're certainly excited to see that come to fruition because it'd be a beautiful addition to the skyline there in Westbrook.
Yeah, we're excited about it. Where especially where Harvard did a study, and I'll butcher the stats, so I won't give all the numbers, but they've studied that the benefits, the health benefits to employees, where it improves concentration, improves happiness, which they measured, reduces depression, and they found it adds $6,500 per employee per year in productivity by being in this type of environment. So then you marry that with what we're creating around it by being in an exciting mixed-use environment that has 26 different food offerings and a half a dozen fitness boutiques and trail network and all these other and green space and a dog park and daycare, all those other aspects. Hines they're one of the largest office developers in the country, did a study that we think it adds about half an hour per day on average on the year per employee of productivity by being in a mixed-use environment like that. Yep. They found that employees come a little bit early, they get coffee, they take a walk, or maybe they're bringing their dog. They stay a little bit later because they're meeting friends for dinner on site. And so when you marry that with the $6,500 a year of productivity within the CLT, you're talking about $10,000, $12,000 a year of productivity for employees. 100 employees, you're talking $1 million to $1.5 million a year in savings. And so my commercial is for a couple bucks a square foot more in rent. You're really finding the benefit of that. But it's really, we're about creating environments where employers can recruit and retain talent. Our customer is not necessarily the employer and the companies. We're very focused on the employees and what's going to get them to want to stay and really have this be an important part of their life as the lines get blurred between work and life and everything in between.
Excellent. And then in terms of some of the other components for phase 2, and I know phase 2 is used kind of in air quotes because there's really like 3 phases or so within phase 2. Some of the other portions that you guys are working on is, I believe, a multifamily aspect to that, which is going to create that live-work environment. the movie theater, I believe you guys,
Cinemark.
Cinemark. So all of that still moving forward, and
Yeah, we took about a 2-year pause during COVID, and that really forced us. I mean, first of all, for the retail component and restaurants and entertainment, everything was on hold. But it forced us to go back and really rethink the plan and what does that look like in a post-COVID world, and how do we rethink the outdoor spaces, which is really the energy and excitement and vibrancy of it, and what our tenant mix is. And that's where we scaled back some of the retail and have brought in a lot of these other elements. So we'll be announcing soon the first 350 apartments, residences with our partner Cathartis Residential. They did Port Walk Place in Portsmouth, the Orpheum in Dover. Great group, and we'll be adding another 400 to 500 beyond that. It's also anchored by the food hall that we're very excited about. That's going to be a fiercely local and regional independent, basically incubator, where people can start. You're probably looking at about a $20,000 to $30,000 of key money to open in a facility like that versus $600,000 to $2 million. I mean, $2.5 million to start your own restaurant and commit to the bricks and mortar space. So we're really excited about what that can be to provide a unique food offering and incubation. Cinemark movie theater with 12 screens, and then a lot of other exciting stuff to come.
For sure.
Element Hotel by Westin Marriott, the whole trail network and outdoor areas.
And then a conference center as well, right?
Right. So we opened the 8,200 person music venue with Live Nation and Waterfront in 2019. And that was a great run. I mean, that brought people in from as far away as Fairfield, Canada, New York City, Philadelphia, and really just electrified the project, right? With Anderson .Paak and Buddy Guy, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. And we made a lot of mistakes as well, and especially initially in how we handled the sound and the traffic. But we started to really work out the kinks towards the end and appreciate the area neighborhoods, rolling with us on that and have tried to be a good neighbor. Unfortunately, we had to cancel Brad Paisley and Steve Miller and others during COVID, but that was always a proof of concept, and it worked. So our intention was always with the city of Westbrook to enclose the venue and make that year round. But most importantly, we've announced the convention center for there, which is, as we've understood, a really big need and can be an enormous economic driver to the entire region. So we're very excited about focusing on the convention center side and bringing that to the project in conjunction with the city, the region, and the state.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to Rock Road just because you and I love talking about it.
I could talk forever about that.
And there's a lot to unpack there. But many listeners of the Boulos Beat are aspiring developers. Any advice for someone just starting out?
Oh man, where to start?
Learn from your mistakes carefully, I imagine. Yeah.
Great to make them. Don't repeat them. Be willing to put in the work. I mean, I've always believed you make your own luck, and you've got to be willing to work. Put in the hours. It's a lot of hard work, and be willing to put your nose to the grindstone. And when you're working, I found that blocking time is one of the best strategies. Where if you think it's going to take an hour to do a lease or a purchase and sale review or look at any type of project, no matter what you're doing, double the amount of time you think you need. Ditch your phone, turn off the computer, and just focus everything on that block of time, like starting a fire with a magnifying glass, right? Just bringing all your energy to that. Something that my partner Neil taught me early on was how you spend 1 minute to see if something's worth spending 30 minutes on, or then 2 hours. I mean, in real estate, it's very easy to chase a lot of projects, so you got to get good at, in my opinion, having a filter to be able to shuffle through that. Asking for help. There's a lot of, as we talked about, older mentors in the business that are really willing to help and do that. But I just come back to really hard work and be willing to put in the time. Yeah.
My football, it reminds me of something my football coach said when I was at Tufts. He said, hard work, this is Bill Samko, shout out. He said, hard work guarantees you nothing, but without it, you don't have a chance. And that's something that always kind of resonated with me.
The other thing I'd say, too, is just two other things would be empathy. I think I've found, especially on the healthcare side, where with the oncology campus we're building, it's really putting yourself in the patient's shoes, the staff's shoes, and trying to understand. And I think the same thing applies if you're doing retail or office or others, but putting yourself in the other person's shoes and their customer or guest's shoes, and trying to have some empathy for their journey and what you can do to make that great. And then I think the results will speak for themselves if you stay focused on that. Not focused on making money. You have to look at the bottom line, the return on cost and all of that, but to me that's a byproduct of paying really close attention to tending to the customer, to the core customer.
Excellent. As a developer and as a business owner, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
I don't sleep. Everything keeps me up at night. It's the sense of urgency on these. I mean, I can't tell you how many stories, and we've experienced these too, but how many stories there are of a lease taking 3 years to negotiate, and it's on the company's CEO's desk for signature, and some completely unrelated event happens and everything gets ripped up. And so time kills deals, as you know, in our business. So I think just the sense of urgency, I think any loose ends that are out there, and what are we missing? What are we not thinking of? Who do we not have on the team that should be? What are competing projects up to? What is there anything changing in the regulatory environment? Not so much the financing side and interest rates. Those are things we can't really control or predict. But what keeps me up is the things we can control, and are we doing it? Am I doing enough to do that? And then also our team, our people. I mean, they are really our most important asset. And over the years, sometimes we've forgotten that too, right? And so making sure, is everybody else, are we really understanding their true talents and building a platform around them, and what do they need? So that keeps me up a lot too, making sure we're doing everything we can for people on our team and in our ecosystem with vendors and everybody else.
Excellent. It seems as though we've turned a corner.
Sorry, and a newborn.
Oh, no worries.
Newborn's keeping us up a lot.
For sure, yeah. I don't have much experience in the newborn. I have 2 Frenchies at home. Walter, Winston, hi. But my colleagues and some of my best friends tell me there's not much sleeping in those early years.
Oh yeah. It's all worth it. You have that to look forward
that's
to.
That's a good up at night, I would say, versus business keeping you up at night.
That's a good problem.
Yeah, good problem to have. Yeah. Obviously, we're kind of it's as we're filming this, it's April 2022. It seems as though we've kind of turned a corner here in the United States with COVID-19. Obviously, that was a big focus for the past, call it 2 years. What are some building trends or design changes that you've seen as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, great question. Reduction in office size and focus on the connections to nature and the outdoors and how people work in that blending of work and play in their life. On the food and beverage and retail side, we've redesigned this project, for instance, and others to make sure we have more outdoor areas. Uber Eats, DoorDash, delivery, being able to even just, a parent coming to pick up their food for takeout. That was already happening. This is accelerated. That we provide a convenient experience for them. On the healthcare side, it's almost endless, right? From UV lights in the ductwork and advanced HEPA filtration, having different egress and access as you come in, touchless sensors and everything else, embracing the remote healthcare side, right, and telemedicine that's taken off. But then there's also been a focus on what I call the worried well, right? People are paying much more attention to their health coming out of COVID. So we've been working with folks on, for instance, the Food as Medicine program at our medical campus. Not only how that ties into food scarcity in the community, but how that ties into healing and health and wellness. And so I think a greater focus on health and wellness, which is something we've been trying to really lean into and embrace on our projects as well, and that takes many forms.
Yeah, and how many? Knowing you guys are in the throes of it with the medical campus, how many times since that was planned have you guys had to kind of go back to the drawing board as a function of these changing trends?
As of this week, 42 layout changes from the very beginning, in partnership with our lead anchor, New England Cancer, who's been great. What is the best way to lay this out and orient it? Because we're trying to provide, I want to say one-stop shopping, but one-stop shopping so you don't have to drive all over southern Maine for your healthcare services, right?
Yep.
If you go and you're there and you need labs drawn or you need an MRI or PET, right, or CT scan, to be able to get all of that right there, see your primary care provider, have specialty practices there. But a lot of the design changes have been around how do we make it feel less clinical, less sterile, less hospital-like, right? So not just for cancer, but for a lot of the other modalities there, how do you reduce some of the stress levels when you drive in? So having the right landscaping, clear wayfinding, sensitivity training for our valet that we're gonna do, a covered canopy for inclement weather, a connection to the covered parking deck, but then also, the partnership with Portland Trails and connecting to that. Outdoor healing gardens. We've worked on, I'm really excited that we're gonna shamelessly clone what Yale New Haven did and have 3 outdoor infusion bays. So, God forbid you can forget for a little while why you're even there, and your family can be there, and you can have your dog, or your son walks out on their cell phone and takes a walk through the trails. And so we've been looking, that's led to a lot of the changes as well, as we try to make this an environment for not just basically getting away from sick care and turning it into health care and making an environment for wellness that people want to go in, not just for treatment and for healthcare or sick reasons, but bring the community in for other reasons too.
That's excellent.
So we're really excited about what's happening there and where we can take it. And we're already oversubscribed with a couple people looking at the last chunk of space. So we're trying to find other areas to expand this on campus now too, and create something unique and distinct that tends to the, sorry, could go on forever, tends to the patient and caregiver experience, because everybody always forgets about that. But also there's a great book called Patients Come Second, and that's really paying attention to nurses, staff, and physicians and making sure we do everything we can, and we play our small part, right? A lot of these clinical providers are incredible with their culture and their employee engagement and their clinical care, but can we provide an area for respect for outdoor gardens, or a Starbucks right nearby, or an area to go recharge your batteries? And so we're constantly thinking about how we tend to those different customers, as you would say.
Yeah, no, and at the center of it all, we've got one of the most beautiful blue quarries I've ever seen. If for those of you that haven't been over to Rock Row yet, I highly recommend going over and checking out what Josh and his team have done there. But one of the most striking things for me when I got over there and looked down in the quarry was just that beautiful green-blue water.
It's
that's
unbelievable.
In there.
It's a 26-acre hole in the ground, 400 feet deep, with a mile around. So we're doing trails around it, and we're really excited to program that and have different shows and events and tree lightings where you could float it in the middle of the quarry lake, because it's filling up with this water. And we'll stop at probably about 40 to 60 feet from the surface so we can project onto the rock walls. You could have local artists sketching on iPads, or schools, and it shows up on the quarry, and we leave it there for a week and have a contest around it. And so it's almost endless. And then the really exciting question for us, and we've been working with Westbrook City staff, is can we get the public in and out of there safely? Because then that opens up sailing, pond hockey tournaments, skating. REI wants to do kayaking in the quarry. So we're really excited about having this be a unique, dynamic venue that you really can't get anywhere else. That's going to be our calling card. And how do you make it not just a big draw for the project, but how do you make it a cultural amenity for the whole region that boosts tourism and spending, and something that we can all be proud of as a cultural asset?
So to that end, in terms of getting folks in and out, are you thinking like a marina type thing, or what? I guess what strategies are you guys looking at to make it more of, I would say, less of a vista and more of an active part
great question.
of the project?
Because there's a lot you can do from a looking at it or interacting point of view, but if you can get down in there. So there's an enormous road that went all the way to the bottom that all the heavy excavation equipment was using. So we have that going for us. It would be finding a second means of egress that works, making sure it's structurally sound. We were originally going to get people all the way down and in, but then you're looking also at reinforcing essentially a mile worth of quarry wall. Now that we're talking about just a section of it to the water's edge, where we would have that type of, you could have a barge there or other things, that's a lot more achievable and feasible. And it's a chance to breathe some life back into this depleted asset that was, from a sustainability point of view, taken from in mind, right? I mean, the aggregate for the turnpike came from that, the runway at the jet port, some of that came from this quarry. But how do we breathe some new life into it? How do we harness some of the environmental energy that's there and turn it into a cultural community asset that's exciting? And if we do that right, I think the restaurants and everybody else that are right there along it will benefit too.
For sure. And so the quarry was actively pumped out to keep it from filling
Bone
up.
dry when we bought it, and we shut the pumps off, and it's about a third full right now.
So what is when do you anticipate it being at the level you guys want?
2.5 years is the estimate.
Excellent.
We're probably down to 2 years now.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, it's very, very exciting.
And we're opening the first park on it right now. It's going to be this nice parklet with trails across from where Cowbell Sports and Burger Bar is going.
Yep.
And we're going to have a nice trailhead there that'll eventually lead to the quarry trail. And then we have a network of 5 different trails on site that will then connect into downtown Westbrook, Stroud Water area, and the rest of the 70 miles of Portland Trail network that's around us. That's something that's been very important to us from day one.
And the one of my favorite things that we've been waiting on, or you guys have been waiting on, is the rock for the middle of the cul-de-sac
Yes.
with the Rock Row logo. That
We were
was
on a
originally
2-hour call last night about that.
That you were. So that was originally, you guys were thinking, going to come from the quarry, but logistical challenges, I think, were.
Well, with Shaw Brothers, we've saved a bunch of the rock, and
Yeah.
I think we have an opportunity to sprinkle that into some different architectural elements. We still have not figured out all of our. We're going through the process right now.
Yeah.
The wayfinding signage, and where do you meet Rock Row? Where does Rock Row meet you from an exterior signage point of view? Is that a boulder that we carve it into? Right, Rock Row established 1880 and 2020. And we're going through all of that right now.
It's exciting.
It's exciting. You gotta.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out how to make it a real neighborhood and destination, but there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, being able to use the rock from the quarry would be great. And one of the other, I would say, new tenants that you guys had opened up to great fanfare in phase one is Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
That obviously was so well received. It created challenges for you guys logistically. How do you mitigate when some of your tenants are so successful that you've got parking challenges or traffic challenges on your hands?
Good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
But we were all shocked. I think Market Basket, us, Chick-fil-A, at how much pent-up demand there was for it. They also had not opened their interior seating yet either.
Yeah.
So that definitely was a factor. But we had a 3.5 hour wait that snaked all around Market Basket, all the way back into the old concert venue parking, and 7 police details.
Yeah.
And it was probably the safest parking lot in America at that point. But look, it's been great. It was the #1 most requested tenant we had, and has really been off to an unbelievable start.
Yeah. No,
Same thing with Starbucks too, who we're now talking about a second location on site with.
Excellent.
That's gone so well for them.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I really wanted to go initially, but I had to wait till the fanfare. It seems like things have kind of quieted down and circulation's back to normal in phase one. And
We stumbled on it the first week, but we really got a handle on it. We got a great team there.
Yeah. And did you guys have to, like for the police detail, was that something that seems to have been phased out, obviously, with just them managing the traffic of the center?
Yeah, it's down to a great level. Shout out to Westbrook PD and city staff, who has always been phenomenal, not just on the planning, but helping businesses once they get open in the city or our project, make sure it works. They really have been over backwards.
It makes me wonder. I mean, obviously, you guys have the space where you could accommodate that many people. It makes me wonder how these and once again, good problem to have, but how these Chick-fil-A stores would operate if you were just a standalone on like an 1.5-acre site.
Right.
Where is all that traffic going to go?
Look at Woburn, Mass. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great example of 95 right there. Yeah.
But phase one off and running for sure. Is there any specific strategies that Waterstone uses to hedge against downturns?
Yeah, we are very careful to phase our projects. This is a great example of not trying to boil the ocean, right? Do it in steps and always be mindful of what our basis is. I think if you sleep close to the floor, you're not going to get too hurt when you fall out of bed. So we're very careful about that.
I like that
and
saying.
we don't build a lot of things on spec either. It's very user and tenant driven.
And so to that end, we've been in a period of almost unprecedented expansion at this point. Not to the blip that we had with the brief recession due to COVID-19 notwithstanding. I guess where do you think we are in the real estate cycle now, and I guess what do you see on the horizon in the next 2 to 5 years?
It's a great question, and I wish I had a crystal ball, but I do think if we look at the supply and demand factors and the growing population base, I think it's all local. It really depends on take this market, for instance. Grocery, that's an example, by the way, of a downturn strategy, is very cycle resistant and recession proof. So that's been a great anchor and draw. We think healthcare, while they face some challenges on the elective surgery side and a lot of the other high margin revenue that was paused for COVID, we think that's a huge need and only going to grow with an aging population, higher utilization rates, more access to insurance, and this enormous push to leave the hospitals, for the hospitals to move off campus closer to the communities and where the people are, and to do those in settings and amenitized environments that have more of a hospitality feel that people like. I think those are trends that are going to continue for a long time. We see a lot of retailers, even hospitals now for ambulatory surgery centers and integrated care facilities, and others, even office tenants, looking at how to engage the outdoors and bring some of their experience outside of their front door and four walls. And so that's something that we are trying to encourage, push people to do. We have our design criteria manual where we try to make sure certain parameters are in place so it's not a free-for-all, right? But we also want to encourage creativity and people to bring their experience outside to the customer or for their employee or for their patient and staff.
Maine is certainly a good place if you want to get people outside. That's
right.
And
Maine especially, right,
yeah,
as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean,
and certainly the sine wave, I would say, for boom times and then downturns here in Maine, I would say has traditionally been shallower than most. I.e., there's not as much. It doesn't get as overbuilt when things are going like gangbusters. And therefore, we don't have as much, I would say, vacant space.
The barriers to entry are, and I think this is a lot of New England too. We're pretty lucky that we're insulated here in the country, that the barriers to entry are pretty high. So there are less projects and competition in dead space like that we haven't seen the same consolidation and leaving behind of empty storefronts and others that we've seen down in the South or other areas of the U.S.
So phase two, with phase one of Rock Row complete, phase two, we've touched on here and there. I guess what part of phase two are you most excited about from, not even just as a developer of the project, but someone that is going to be going there to live, work, and play someday?
You're going to think I sound corny, but the feeling you get. We always say we're after heart share, not market share, right? And when you walk out of, whether it's your apartment, your job at one of the retailers, you're finished dining with your family, or you're coming out of a healthcare appointment, and you turn on that street and you look to your left, what do you see? What do you feel and experience to your right? And this is very carefully considered. And what we're going for is that human element, the human energy, that street level energy, right? And I'm most excited about how it's going to feel when you're at the plaza with your family, or you're grabbing a drink with friends overlooking the quarry, or you're here working or living. And I always say if it doesn't work out, I'll be living in the quarry, in the bottom of the quarry, so I'll really get the feeling then. Yeah. But the feeling that we're going for our guests, right? Our tenants are our customers, their customers are our guests. And that also starts before you even come on site. So we're continuing trying to listen and engage and improve on social media from people's homes, from their journey in. What is that experience like to when you get here, park and walk out there with your family or friends, and what is that experience like? So it's the experience blueprint that we're going to be constantly having delightfully surprising, fresh, innovative things happening. So no two trips are the same. This is not a shopping center. It's not even really a mixed-use project. It's really a destination and a place to be instead of just go do what you need to do and leave. That we want you to come and spend the whole day.
Certainly, I would say the only project of this size and scale, and that's ever really been contemplated, and a true lifestyle center once it all comes to fruition with the different elements that you've touched on, and so far you and your team have done a great job. As someone that is slightly biased,
Sure.
Curating essentially what is a city district there
Yes,
in
it's
Westbrook.
the largest economic development project in the state, where other than there's a large turbine offshore project happening,
Yep.
but REMI and USM did a study, and including the convention center and Rock Row at full build out will add over 8,000 jobs on site, tax revenues to Westbrook of close to $6 million. They were currently 95,000 when we bought it, but over $500 to $600 million in spending in the region. For the state, way beyond just Cumberland County. So starting to get some of that up north and to the west. So the economic impact this can have is absolutely enormous. And that's what we're excited about. It's not just about what's happening within our four boundaries, but how can we affect in a positive manner everything around us? How can we partner with others too and help that grow? And that's where the partnerships with the city have been helpful. Starting to form more with the state, with the Economic Development Office and the Governor's Office. And there's a lot of exciting places we can take this, and the impact can be absolutely tremendous.
Excellent. What is the best or most important lesson you've learned thus far in your career?
I'd say the best is to listen, right? With 2 ears, 1 mouth, and a reason.
Yep.
Use them in that proportion. That was some great advice and a lesson I've learned.
Are there any properties that you've sold that you regret?
No, because we've been, by and large, a buy or build and hold strategy. We're thinking very long term. We are not the group that comes in and just flips something. And you see that in the projects we do, that we take a lot of pride in them, and we want it to be something that the whole area is proud of. So we've sold a few things over the years to keep our liquidity up.
Yep.
We have no outside partners. It's just Neil and myself. We have plowed all of our profits back in for the last 18 years. So we really eat our own cooking. And that's enabled us to be nimble too, because we can react and not have to answer to a huge corporation and shareholders and everything. We're the ones at the end of the day holding the bag. So I think I'd regret more the opportunities we didn't take advantage of next to our projects, or ones that we didn't act quick enough or get done. So it's more all of the missed opportunities and the opportunity cost there that we didn't pull off.
So to that end, I guess, is there a property that you didn't buy that you really wish you did? And what would that be?
Yeah, look, whether it's back in 2007, the old DML Auto used car shop in front, we were building this awesome project in Epping, and we knew that was a great CVS location, and we just couldn't pull the trigger on it, and somebody else stepped in and made a great deal on that. There was a large 30-acre site in downtown Boston that we could have bought during the downturn, this old, just contaminated brownfield that could have been absolutely incredible for the community there. And we looked at it and just, we couldn't pull the trigger.
Gotcha.
I wish we did. Those are two that I regret. I could go on for an hour on that.
Tufts and the alumni and the network of alumni were very influential for me getting into the business. You graduated from Boston College. How did that help guide you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's been great. It's a really strong network and sense of community and camaraderie coming out of there. So it's great staying in touch with other fellow Eagles. I think it's a really strong network in New England, and has just kind of fostered or propelled and fanned the flames of an already, curiosity to just learn more, that intellectual curiosity coming out of there.
For sure.
And there's some great programs for some of the real estate networks and others that they do a great job really staying in touch and keeping people together. So I've been trying to take advantage of some of those.
It seems like in greater Boston, you hear a lot about Boston College guys, Tufts Tufts has a huge network in the real estate community down there, and then obviously Holy Cross.
Yeah.
So I would say we're both fairly fortunate to have come from one of those three. Just not that's the only game in town by any means, but it seems like a lot of the peers. In
a
the
lot
real
of people
estate
ended up in the business in different forms too. So it's exciting.
Yeah, especially when you can work with folks, whether it's on the brokerage side, architecture side. It really takes a village to pull off all of these projects.
Yeah. Plus, my two sisters went there too, so that was a lot of fun to be there at close to the same time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What project is Waterstone most focused on at this time?
Right now, we are most focused on Rock Row. We have a lot of other projects going on, but that has an enormous amount of focus and attention, not just from us, but the 110, 120 people working on it when you factor in the architects and engineers and trail designers and everything in between. So that has and it needs to have a real focus to get this done properly.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to hear it as one of your brokers on the project. Yeah.
You guys have been doing a great job.
Thank you. So lastly, you just became a father now you have two boys. How has that changed your perspective on business?
Can't stop smiling automatically. Yeah, Lucas is just over 2, and then Ethan is 9 weeks. So if I seem tired, that's why.
Yeah.
And my wife Erin is amazing. Shout out to her. I find myself thinking a lot more about what would they think if I did something. Like before I respond or say something or do something, like what would they think, and what advice would I give them as their dad later on down the road. So I try to just make sure I do whatever they'd be proud of. That's nice. It's kind of like a North Star that holds you accountable to always doing the right thing and handling things the right way if you can. And then the others is I'm just learning patience, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of trial by fire, but I think it's kind of made me be a little bit more patient and, realizing that everything in their life is kind of going to happen developmentally before age 5, right? And so now is the time to really be present. So trying hard to be just more present in there with them, and that they don't care about real estate or dad's job. It's just, is he there? So I just want to make sure I'm spending enough time with them and enjoying every second of it.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Yeah, hopefully we get Rock Row finished and they'll have quite the place to come up and visit when they come to Maine.
Very excited. We keep expanding it, so it's going to take longer and longer, but can't wait to bring them up here. Hopefully Danny Shaw and the guys will let them play in some of the trucks this summer. That might be nice.
Perfect. Yeah. Dump trucks. Kids, you can't get enough.
Trash truck, dump truck, and excavator. That's his new word.
Oh,
yeah.
Perfect. Well, very fitting for the project. Well, Josh, thank you very much for being a guest today on the Boulos Beat, a Boulos Company podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you.
You can learn more about Josh and Waterstone Property Group at the company's website, which is www.waterstonepg.com. On Facebook at Waterstone Properties Group, on Twitter at Waterstone, and on Instagram at WaterstonePG.
And rockrow.com.
And rockrow.com.
Shamelessly plug that. Yep.
There we go. Please be sure to visit us at www.boulos.com. And you can also find us at the Boulos Company on Facebook and LinkedIn, and at the Boulos Company on Instagram and Twitter. In closing, I will sign off as the same way as our normal host, Greg Boulos, does. The key to real estate is always outliving your debt.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was nice spending time with you.